Hey, I'm Robert Wong. I'm a designer by training, and I work at Google.
Amazing. Yeah. I don't know how you follow that. My name is Brandon ROCHON. I am a Chief Creative Officer of an advertising agency called Kastner, and also founder of an innovation venture studio called Fluent.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Monique Nelson. I'm the chair and CEO of UWG, otherwise known as UniWorld Group, the longest-standing multicultural marketing and advertising agency in the nation.
Woo! Oh, you better say it. Like, wait. She couldn't. It was so long. It was like, whoa.
No.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Love Malone. I am the founder and CEO of a company called the GODREAU Group.
And I'm NICOLE GODREAU. I work at Twitter, and I'll be your moderator. So I want to jump right into it. We are talking about trailblazers, which all of y'all are, right? And so trailblazers are leaders who leave a path for others to follow. But to create pathways for others to follow, you have to know who you are and what you stand for first. So Monique, I'm going to throw this question to you. How did you come into your purpose, and how does this manifest into what you do every day?
Very carefully. And with intent. I was always into what I do right now. I was always a champion of diversity. I was a Posse scholar. So I started this journey at 16. So it's something that's probably ingrained in me in ways that I didn't even imagine, and ultimately has led me to always want to be a part of an inclusive conversation. And when I found multicultural marketing, which was much later than I would have imagined, I had traveled all over the world, done marketing in Asia, South America, Europe, and then ultimately back here in the States, I always wondered, why are we not speaking to people as they are versus as a country? We would never treat someone from Germany the same way we would treat someone in Korea. So why would we do that here? So finding my purpose was about making sure that I continue to educate, empower, and ultimately bring our clients along to what we're doing every day. And I hope to embody that with everything that we do in our organization, making sure that we live with integrity and making sure that we treat our consumers, our clients, and ultimately all of our folks with that same respect.
It's amazing, and I think just to see those spaces to question it, because it is, I think we go out and we're like, hey, like something's not right here, and we aim to go and fill those gaps and create those spaces that aren't there for us. For someone who I think maybe didn't know their purpose, maybe early on, Robert, tell us a little bit about.
She would put you on blast, told me. She was like, you was aimlessly wandering like a fool.
You have a really interesting backstory that I want everyone to hear more about. So can you tell us about the early part of your career and what's a takeaway from that guides you in your career now?
All right. So yeah, I did not know what I wanted to do. I actually studied accounting first. But then I think at one point I realized like life's too short, life's too precious, and I didn't want my work life and my personal life to be two different things. I wanted to be one thing. So I always drew as a kid. I'm an immigrant kid, first one to be able to go to college. So if you're a smart kid, get good grades, you just kind of wrote it off like artists for people who don't get good grades. And my parents expect me to be, I don't know if anyone has those kind of parents. I did. Doctor, lawyer, the whole typical thing. But I think at one point I just decided, you know what, I think I'm going to just take a chance and, go to art school, go to design school, and hope for the best. My parents were very supportive, actually, and that was really cool. But back to the thing that really shaped me is I did not know what I wanted to do at all. And I remember after freshman year, which was amazing because you just like sculpted, did all sorts of drawing and all that stuff. But you had to like pick a major for the rest of I went to Parsons here in New York. You had to pick a major. You had to tick one of the 8 boxes. Like, are you a fine artist, illustrator, photographer, communication designer, all that stuff. And I sat there, like I did not know which one was gonna tick. And clock was 2 minutes before 5, and there's the last day I had to pick my major, and I just took communication design because it seemed like the thing I didn't know what it was the most.
Nice.
And like, okay, I don't know, because everything else seemed like I had to do that one thing. And then when it came out, it's the same thing. You graduate as a designer, graphic designer, and you had these like roles, like, oh, are you going to be an editorial designer, or a brand identity designer, or a packaging designer? And once again, I kind of want to do it all. I envy people who kind of know what they want to do and they pursue it and they're the best in the world at it. I want to do everything. I'll probably be bad at all those things, but I just want to try. And what it did do, though, was, so I ended up joining a small design firm that just did whatever it took to make payroll. And because you have no expertise in a weird way, sorry.
We all just trying to make it.
Yeah, so all hustling.
We out here.
But an interesting thing I discovered, though, and I think it's actually been really useful now, is that if you're an expert in anything, by definition, no matter how much you know, there's a limit to what you know. And if you start off with just a desire to understand things, you have an infinite pool of resources to attack any problem. So the whole famous, to a hammer, everything's a nail, because I was no good at any specific tool, I would just look at every problem like, well, maybe a film would be good here, maybe a logo design. So it was just more open, you see more holistically. And one thing that in our field, I spend more and more time, being on the other side, not as the creator, but as the person receiving the thing. Like, what will someone actually really feel? What would they actually think? What would they actually do when confronted with this stimulus? And because I don't have that tied to any particular creation discipline, I think it helps to keep it real as a human being reacting to things versus being in love with design or storytelling or film or product design or anything like that.
And I want to just circle back. You said you went to art school, Parsons. Put context on that, y'all. He is the first person to become a VP at Google with an art degree.
Come on. I'll get that up.
So how did you leverage your background to help at art school to help you succeed at Google?
Okay, first of all, showing up at Google, like this was 12 years ago, as someone with an art degree, it was probably the most intimidating thing for anyone to go through. You literally have the inventor of the internet as a colleague. Like, oh, what you do? I invented the internet. Oh, what you do? Oh, I kerned some type before. So it's really intimidating. And everything that I kind of built my career on that I was decent at, that people paid me money for, Google hadn't needed to succeed. Like no marketing, no storytelling, no design, no branding, nothing, right? So it's very intimidating. However, the thing that kept me going and the reason why I joined was like, hey, if companies like Google are shaping the future of humanity, I want to make sure that people from the humanities are there helping to shape that future.
Preach, brother, preach.
And so what we have as a superpower, and everyone here in this room, that I found really incredibly useful is that we know Photoshop, Final Cut Pro, InDesign. And I know it's kind of like a joke, but the reality is you can, in a couple of hours, make a thing, a picture, an object, a film of a possible future that you didn't need like 200 engineers building a thing for 6 months. So you could just fake it, like, hey, you know what? If you did this, it could look like this, or if you did, it could feel like this, and you actually make the thing that a real user on the other side of the company would actually see, hear, experience, and that turned out to be a really powerful tool. We jumped to the end to like, it'd be cool if things were like this, and you just make the thing in a couple hours, and then the company goes, oh yeah. And what you realize quickly that when companies and organizations get bigger and bigger and more complex, lots of innovation's happening. Most of the time it's happening in parts. Like innovation is special, people are specialized, compartmentalized, and when you have that distance, you can paint the picture of something that would be created as a whole. You can look at innovation holistically, and so we've been able to paint pictures of that, and the company's been really interested in building things towards those futures that a bunch of people with art degrees made. So that was pretty cool.
And I think it's also so essential to realize like how important the arts and the humanities are to companies and especially tech companies as well. Jumping into, I think, having just such an illustrious career, I'm going to go to you, Brandon. You worked at global brands such as PlayStation, Absolute, Nissan Europe, the global Coke Zero account, and also, y'all, he won 2 of the first branded entertainment lions ever to be awarded at Cannes. So just put some respect on his name. Now, on top of this, you also decided to start Sneaker Inc., and it's a media brand representing global sneaker culture. So what inspired you to start Sneaker Inc. on top of everything else?
Oh, that's a good question. I wanted to work at Vice. That was inspiration. And then I was like, forget Vice. I'm gonna make it better than Vice, right? I'm still working on it, But no, it was, I was doing this thing called advertising, and I had great mentors and really good people who poured into me. And I kind of got a little bit famous in advertising, and to wake up one day and realize I didn't like it. Because it wasn't really creating culture, it wasn't moving and impacting culture and telling stories that I thought was right. I was sitting in boardrooms and having to pontificate about things and greatness and how culture was this when really it was that. And I said, well, then the only way I could really truly say that I know culture is I have to show the world that I can create it with people who create culture daily. And culture isn't created in boardrooms, right?
Oh.
And culture is usually created by people who look like the people who sit on the stage right now. And what culture was the most global conversation happening at this time, and something that was very dear to me was sneakers. And so I looked at what was the conversation? There's 3 things that people stood in line for. It was iPhones, Star Wars, and sneakers. So I said, $60 billion business over here, right? Amazing creativity over here. Why don't we build a business that brings the 2 together? And I just, got together with smart people who were super passionate about it, an entrepreneurial in spirit, and who understood and had fluencies in places that I didn't have. And we looked at the hype beasts and the high snobiety, and I realized that as an advertising agency, we would never be able to do this. But if I was to build an OTT channel that was to be a platform to champion people who were in the shoes, because hype beast and high snobiety and complex, we're talking about the shoes. And my shoes is always fire, y'all. Right? My kicks, my feet always look this good. I didn't come out here to show, right? I wake, pray, and slay all day. But so when I did that, I realized that, if I can control a tribe, but from an inclusive place, and I could be the most authentic connection to a tribe and start to tell stories that elevated people that usually most people in our industry exploit, right? Maybe we could have a different conversation when I walked into the boardroom. And so my dad always said, right, don't talk about it, be about it. And so I said, well, I know nothing about building an OTT. I know a little bit about making content. I know a little bit about brands. I know some great people in Hollywood. I know my Rolodex was super fat with people in culture, so let's just make this thing called Sneaker Inc. And that's what I did, and it just kind of pivoted into the next thing, which I understand my focus went from building brands and being in advertising to understanding this world called innovation and venture. And I said, that's the pivot. So that's how I got into it.
Yeah, because I think just seeing that opportunity, you said $60 billion business.
$60 billion business, yo. Let me get a piece of that.
Exactly, and I think making
because no agency gonna pay me that. But Adidas will.
I cannot. And essentially really just creating your own seat there, bringing people in, using the resources that you had to create your vision.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
And so I think jumping to people who are interested in starting their own business, let me just get a show of hands. How many people are interested in starting their own business, entrepreneurs, possible in the room? Oh, there's a lot of us
Agencies,
out here.
look at this. Buying an existing. Come on. That's what all agencies want y'all to see
Yes, yes. Okay, so
Say, don't leave the legacies.
this.
We need them.
We need the legacy, but we
them to
also
keep-
need to figure out how to flip this damn table.
That's right.
And stop trying to sit at it.
That's right. Build our own.
exactly.
Build our own. I want the building, not the table.
Not the table.
And so I wanna be frank. There are a huge amount of risks involved. So especially is that these systems are in place. The systems that are in place right now are for identifying, fostering, and supporting entrepreneurs. They favor white males for the most part, do they not?
Yes.
And so only 1%.
For the most part, they do. Don't say for the most part. Keep it real.
It
They
does.
do.
It does. Facts.
Facts. Truth and facts.
Because only 1% of venture-backed founders are Black, and only 1.8 are Latinx. And
How many are women? Come on. Let's keep it real.
I was going to
Thank
say
you.
less than.
Thank you.
It's actually
Exactly.
0.2 for Black women.
And so, Love, I want to talk to you. You know, when did you know it was time for you to take that leap to start your own company and have those conversations with yourself internally about jumping into that space?
It was a lot of praying, to be honest, and thinking about it because it was something I wanted to do. And, you know, as someone who had had a steady job, and I was really lucky to have the job, I was happy with my job. I was working at Ogilvy, I was a global director, and I decided that I was tired of asking for something to happen, waiting for it to happen. So I decided that I would just say fuck it and do it. And
Bars. Fuck it and do it. I love it.
Yes.
That's a shirt.
I mean, I kind of feel like, you know, as far as courage, I don't know if at some point you have to decide whether or not you're going to live your life or exist, right? Or if you're going to do something boldly. I moved from a small town in central Illinois, and I was in New York. And that, if I'm going to be in New York, I'm going to be bold. If not, I'm going to stay to my little small town and been close to my parents. So I thought I was going to play it big and try something bold. And, you know, of course there's a lot of challenges in that because you say you're going to start a business, but then all the other stuff that has to happen, right? Getting the money to do the business and getting people to believe in you to do the business.
Is Love's mic on? No.
Oh.
I'm about to say, she dropping knowledge up here, y'all. It's so sweet. So chivalrous.
Being
You're so
censored like
there
normal.
you
No, just say, is that right?
There you
Yeah.
go. That
Being
makes sense.
censored.
chivalrous. We got your back, girl. We got you. We got you.
See, this is what happens with legacy. They always have something. This is how you get things done. Okay. So,
Right.
nevertheless, I don't know what was heard, but I literally came from a small town in central Illinois, and there was literally a cornfield in my backyard. So I moved to New York because I wanted more. Like most people, you've seen those little movies, and everyone wants to move to the big city. And I decided to start this business because I had, was a physics major. I worked at Merck for many years, and then I moved over into at BBDO. So I worked in that for a few years, and then went over to Ogilvy. So I did a bunch of jobs. I had got pretty much as far as I thought I could do with at Ogilvy, and I decided that I really still wanted to look at, getting people hired and getting people jobs. The one thing that I enjoyed the most when I was at Ogilvy was being able to find places at Ogilvy that we can bring people in. I would spend most of my time looking at people for the internship program. And when you spend any extra time that you have on something, there's something in it that you like doing. And I've never thought of myself as an HR person. In fact, I'm not even sure if I like when I think of HR, I'm like, oh, no, not HR. I'm not a recruiter at all, but what I did like to do is get people into this industry that I thought was actually an industry that people should be able to get into. That was not me. Something just turned on. Sorry. No?
No, it's okay.
I think I'm gonna turn this one off.
It's
Oh,
on
it's on.
now. Yeah.
This is on. Okay. This is on now?
No.
No.
Here, hold on. I'm just gonna move these. There we go. Yeah, we got to be careful in
Okay.
New York when something goes boom. People are like, wait. I'm like, if there's a sound, I'm like, no, what is it? But I just wanted to actually do this thing, actually be able to get people hired. So I also I was in the industry, so I also, as a global director, I knew actually how the industry worked. I'd go to these events, I'd sit on stage, and people would be like, we need to hire more people of color. I'd go to events, and they'd be packed with people of color. At Tiffany Center, like, best event. Like, people are able to go and be there, create an award show, get recognized. People have done everything they could to make sure, and more, to get people in the room so that you can get hired and get into this industry that should be pretty easy. We're talking about culture. Like, I haven't walked in a room, I'm in my 40s. I haven't walked in a room, no matter if it's white or black, and there wasn't black music playing. It could be all white people there. I've been going to Cannes for 12 years at this point. I'd be walking down the beach, and I'd look at, there's not one person of color in there, and the music is wall to wall. And I could not, every commercial, actually, if you look at the commercials and you look at who's produced the music, where the music is coming from, no matter who's in the music or in the commercial or who did the commercial, we've recognized the music, we recognize the culture. And it was frustrating to me that when I asked people, like, I'd go to these events and people would be like, I really would hire people if only we could find them. Or if only, they were, next thing was like, only if they were qualified. It's like, qualified to do a commercial? Like, I literally work where people were curing cancer. Like, we're talking about a commercial for chocolate. Like, what are we talking about here? And so it would be annoying. So I decided, the good thing about someone from the Midwest is I sit and listen a lot. And I also understand the industry. So it's not a lot of games you can play with me in that instance. And so what I decided to do is to create a company that looked at the industry from a different perspective, which is looked at the industry as to where diversity lies without talking about it. So everyone talks about diversity as a separate thing that the industry needs to get, but the industry already has diversity within how we run the industry. So the first thing is we get a creative brief. First thing, we have the marketing team, and they have target market. They decide who they're going to market this product to exactly. They know that it's this woman who is 34, who has 2.2 kids, who maybe went to college, who has 1.2 dogs. We know so much about who that person is that product is going to. That is diversity, right? That's one piece. And then we do the actual brief, and then we decide who are we going to actually put this out to? Who is going to be the target market? We know exactly who that needs to be. In all the years, no matter what the team looked like, when I got into a focus group, they were always diverse. It always threw me off. I was a global director, think about this, for BlackRock. You need millions of dollars just to show up in that door. But the focus group somehow had black people in it. I was like, really? This has black people? And it just threw me off because it was like no matter what account I was on, no matter what I was doing, the focus groups were always diverse. And I won't even we're going to talk about media. Media. Think about media, programmatic buys. Media literally is a place by where you are, how old you are, what race you are, and it follows you around all day. And we know exactly how much we're going to spend against it. But no one talks about diversity like that. But that's actually diversity in this industry. And we talk about the business of diversity. We can't talk about it's good for your business, it feels good. If that was the case, we wouldn't be talking about feeding people the hungry anymore. Because if it felt good, people would do stuff. But when you put money behind it and you tell people this is where it actually lives, they'll actually make moves. So if you tell people your target market is 30% Latino and you don't have anyone on the team that's Latino, how are you getting the best work? That to me is just plain common sense. So when you ask me why did I start the business, I started the business because I really wanted to just look at this business that I had loved and couldn't understand why people couldn't just be normal about it and look at what they were actually doing as a business and say, hey, we can actually put people, not because it feels good to put people in color, but because I need to innovate my team. If you want to talk about innovating the creative industry, you have to look at the people for innovation, period. We are people that make creatives. So if you have the same 10 people that all look alike, you don't have a team that's innovative, period. People pay for innovation. That budget comes from the CEO. That budget's unlimited if it talks about innovation. Think about that. But then I know the programs that I enjoy going to, they're struggling always trying to find money and budget. Why? Because they're saying, oh, this is a good thing to do, let's put that budget aside. Versus, how are we going to innovate our industry? How are we going to innovate our agency? So I know that was a lot longer than you probably wanted, but I did want to share. That was why I started the business. But as far as starting your business, I think you have to know that you need passion for it, because it's a lot of lonely days. It's a lot of poor days. I haven't got my hair done. I don't know when I don't know when. I mean, even, it's like really bad. Like, it's getting to the point, there's just things where, like, a dress, I don't know, I Rent the Runway, thank you. I love them. But my point is, like, there's just a lot of things you have to make a decision on when you're starting a business. But I would say, just start it. The great thing is there's money out there. I was told, like, you get these stats and people say there's not going to be money. Sure, my friends don't have any money because they're all in creative, so that's the dead end. So I was like, well, that's great, awesome. They can do banners and stuff for you. But you can find, there are, and I want to say go to programs, you can figure out ways to, like, pull money in. So one of the things I end up doing is I sat on a board, and I'm sharing this, and you're welcome, because I made a lot of money on this. I sat on a board as an advisor for advertising. I got 2% of the company. Now mind you, most people say they need to get paid. Yeah, we do. But I took actually what they would have paid me to do the work, which was $75,000, and I actually put it into the business. 18 months later, Coca-Cola purchased 30% of that business for millions of dollars, and I ended up getting several $1 million just on that. So you can find money in a lot of places, is my point. And you can also ask people that have skills to do it, so don't let money be the reason why you don't start your business. And don't think, and go to people and find, they have money. There are a lot of people sitting in this room. I see some people with some money. Somehow I have a gift for that. And you can see whether or not they'll be able to help you and do your business. But don't let anything stop you from starting the business. But you can't do it with the current job. It's hard. I had to quit Ogilvy. I did get John Cypher's cell number, though, just in case I needed to go back. That's a true story.
That's a true tip.
Yeah, that's a true story. Don't leave your job and tell everybody, go jump off a roof. You do need to, this industry is small. You need to say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Give me the good number that your wife calls you on so that I can possibly give you a call back. Woo. And believe it or not, Ogilvy was my first client. So you think about that. BBDO was my second. So I went to the places that means, hopefully to all of you and people who want to use my product later, what that means to you is the people who I work for believed in my product. And just, it's called Gradient Group. Do a plug. It's called Gradient Group. What we do is we just get people hired. That's all I care about. If you, like everyone who did their portfolios here, we basically put your portfolios on, we get you hired into the companies that are looking for you. It's like a dating site, lots of tags, lots of fun.
Yes, girl. You threw out some tips, some knowledge right there. Also going back to you, I also just want to focus on, there are a lot of creative entrepreneurs in the room. What are some pitfalls to look out for when starting out? I think being young, some of us broke, where, I think, and not having the resources or family background who are entering into these spaces, what tips can you give us?
Well, I can tell you what I did. This is so sad to say, I put 20% aside of my savings for my family, because I was always afraid that if I didn't have my stable job, that someone was going to call for some money and be in trouble, and I couldn't. And a lot of people of color, if you have a job, your family sometimes depended on you. And so that was the scariest part about starting my business, was that somebody was going to need me. But what you realize is they figure it out. I would say the biggest tip would I would start when you're young. The older you are, the more bills you have.
That's right.
It's like, how, you literally, so I don't think there's a thing about being too young or too old to start your business. I think you should start it when you are ready, but it's such a huge commitment. I mean, you have to have passion about something. Like if you're like, I'm thinking about doing it, then you're not ready. Because I can tell you it's the loneliest thing I've ever done in a city that has millions of people. It's the brokest thing I've ever done. And I don't like being broke. I literally went on dating sites just to eat sometimes. Don't judge me.
Sis.
I called it research.
Wow, we're giving it all.
So I mean, I just don't think you should let anything stop you. And if you're in, I think the thing about New Yorkers, which I can say honestly, which I love about being here in New York, it's just, no one just does one thing anyway. You got a million jobs. But I think the spirit of being able to do something and put your heart into it because you want to and you love it, I think you should just do it. I don't think I don't think you should let anything stop you. And I think if more people of color put businesses together, people are looking for you and you don't know they are, I should say that. There are investors out there and family offices that invest in angel rounds and also seed. I had to go out and search for them. I'm happy to give them to you guys. And if you do Love Malone and LinkedIn with me, probably they're on there. But you just need to be careful who you get in bed with because you may not get up the same way. But you want to be careful about that. But there are a lot of businesses out there, I mean, family offices and they need to give their money to you. So that was the other thing no one told me, right? I did my tech firm I mortgaged the house as well. But I then found out after I built the tech that I could have went to some of these seed round places because they are looking right now, people of color and women, thank you, Me Too. Everyone's excited about helping. These numbers came out, the stats are very low. There's a lot of companies, I mean, now again, I'm saying family offices, I'm being very clear about this, family offices, and also some small private investors. Those are the ones you want to go to for seed money. And you want to look for seed and angel money. And they are out there, especially for Black women. There are like 4 groups that have done a really good job. And look for anybody who has more than 25 million or 30 million that they're giving away. If they're giving $10,000, keep moving because you can't do anything with $10,000, unless you can. I mean, if you see your budget and $10,000 is good, do that. But in most cases, it's not going to get you anywhere.
Okay.
Maybe, I don't know. It's better.
No, you're right. You're right. I mean,
I always go back to
No.
$10,000.
no,
Depends on what you need.
no. I would say $10,000 ain't nothing.
Yeah, it's not enough.
That's play money. Right.
But don't take too much.
Yeah, be careful about what you give out. Yeah, right. You want to keep as much of your business, and then also look at a lot of you guys are out here, if you're freelancing, I met a lot of freelancers today, do an LLC. A lot of companies, a lot of brands are looking for supplier diversity. And so if you're a creative artist or you're doing something that you can actually sell, separately as a freelancer, just do it as an LLC and you can actually get into some companies and get some work just being a supplier diversity, supplier diversity,
Diverse
yes.
supplier.
Diverse supply. I knew it was like backwards. Thank you again. She helps me out. I think you have to be innovative of how you look for your money, and I don't question this room because I kind of feel like Black people are the most innovative. My mom taught me like if I need money, you just look for it and find it. Like there was just never. She just find money. So.
Yes, girl. Okay, so we've had it out on time. I want to leave room for Q&A. Does anyone have any questions for our panelists? Do we have a mic? Oh.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Brianna DeBrew. I'm a recent grad from VCU. And I wanted to ask, are you guys open to mentoring?
Wait, what?
No, mentoring. I have to be honest, I'm full, but I do know some people that would be open to it. So
I would always say go into that conversation not asking for a mentor. I think it's always tough for people to commit to that. Ask for a coffee. It's a little bit like, hey, are you open to getting married? I think like start with a coffee, ask for advice.
It's like we call them Tinder mentoring. No?
Yeah, and if you're lucky, they will just help,
Yes.
or they can point you to the help. But I think the direct like asking people for a mentor, I think it's a lot.
Yeah, I think
feel like
it's
a lot
definitely true. I think I'm on the more entry level side of this crew here, and looking for mentors can sometimes be difficult.
Sure.
But I think looking for people that you find inspiring, passionate with, send that LinkedIn message on through, and sort of meet with them and see like, would they also be a good mentor for you? Not just finding anyone who's at any title, but
It's
someone
gotta
that can
be
really
a match.
Yeah, that's
it's
a true
both
match.
you and the person, so
And that's why a mentor will find you.
Yeah.
You will never find a mentor.
correct.
They'll find you.
Done.
Keep asking. Ask everybody. I do.
Next up.
Great job so far on the panel. My question is, just sticking with the title of the panel, could you give us your most memorable example of how you created a seat at the table, or how my man said, how you flipped the table? Real live example.
Right? How I flipped the table was I realized that every time I sat at the table didn't want me there. Right? And then so I was talking to someone earlier, and I use hip hop affirmations all the time. So Jay-Z said it best, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. And then Snoop said, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. I was making a lot of money for a lot of companies, and I was getting a fraction of that. And then every time I sat at the table, I had to figure out why you didn't want me at the table. But then I realized that my culture created, literally and controlled, almost 90% of all things pop culture globally. So really, I didn't need to be at your table, you needed to be at mine. I hope that answers
I would
Anyone
say
else? I see a couple down here.
being on time.
Okay, well, I guess I'll stand up. This is a little intimidating. Well, thank you guys. This is very inspiring on my end. I don't know about anyone else. This is like a breath of fresh air. Like,
Awesome.
I'm at the ad PR program at CCNY, and I've seen, just no offense to CCNY Harlem, what up? It's just been a lot of old, like, Caucasian execs that they've been bringing to speak. And honestly, like, seeing people of color in these higher positions, it just gives me motivation. And,
Awesome.
I appreciate you guys. Also, love Malone. I'm looking for your site, and I can't find it.
I know, it's hidden. Well, she'll give you a pass to get in.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm just like on Google. I'm like Googling.
It's hidden until January, just so you guys know. We have a couple of the passes you can get in and see it. What we've done is we pre-launched, so we're not fully launched yet, and the goal was to hyper-target people of color to get on first. So right now we have about 6,000 people that we are loading, and so that's why we haven't unhidden it yet, because it's a little bit of extra stuff that we weren't expecting this much. We just started opening up jobs, so Ogilvy Jobs, thank you Ogilvy, just went up this week. Next week we'll put up BBDO jobs, then we have Estee Lauder jobs, Vayner, I'm sorry, not Vayner, that was my Freudian slip, I'm trying to get them. Vice jobs, the 5 Vice jobs, and then I'm missing someone, oh my goodness, Edelman. I should have said them first, they get upset. So all that to say is the goal was to get some jobs up, and then January we'll open it up. Just a little other small thing is that we're only inviting companies and agencies that our community wants to be with. So so they have to basically commit to hiring people from our system. If they do not hire people from our system, we do not extend the invite to them the following year. Because this is for profit, I do not accept, they have to hire people or they lose their position on the site. And we give it to someone else, and it's just that simple. My job, I work for you guys. My community is who I work for. So I don't work for the agencies or the companies, but we do appreciate them coming in and making sure you guys get hired. Okay.
Hey, I want to answer that previous question a little bit. I think you want to say it too. You should answer it too.
I just want to move on. I don't know what time it's like.
One thing, I always get this a lot, like, hey, people always ask me
We're
when I
between
give
you and
talks,
drinks.
can how do I get design to be at the table at my company? And I always say, like, you can't ask for it to be at the table. And the one thing I've discovered is that you have to come up with the things that no one would have known to ask of you. So for instance, like if your job is to do something that people ask of you, there'll always be someone behind you, 100 people behind you who can do that job better or worse than you. And you can just try your best to be the very best at that. But that's not what you get at the table. What's going to get you at the table is when you think of something to do that no one asked for, no one even could have imagined asked for, and you offer it to the company or to the organization or whatever, and they go, oh, wow, we never would have thought of that. Thank you. And that's the kind of thinking that gets you to the table.
Question?
Yeah, I had a question, but I actually feel like you just answered it. A lot of the creating a seat at the table, it sounds like, was done by just like creating a different table in a different location in a different spot. And I think that's great. And I think we're in a point in culture where you like play the game or you like create your own game. But for those of us who are moving up in the company and higher, I feel like it's a different, there's always a seat at the table for juniors. People are excited, like, oh, you're cute, share your ideas. But I think as you rise up, like, people are less willing to sit there with you. And I think I'm just looking for advice in terms of how do you create it at senior management at places, because you can't leave every time. There's not an opportunity for you.
I feel like that in the agency, what I felt like I tried to do when I was there was to make sure that I had enough advocates there. And most of my advocates were white men, no offense, but there were no other, there were very few people there. And so like the fact that before John Cipher became the CEO, I had already started, like, as far as he became my mentor in a way, because I would meet with him once a month to talk about what I was looking for. So as far as being in the agency, there are people around you that you already know that have your back. And what you need to do is make sure you have their back. And in the agencies, you rise together. I got my job at Ogilvy from BBDO with my manager. So think about that. I went from BBDO with my manager at the time, and I had a position because of that. And he promoted me himself 6 times. So with that, I think you have to get advocates in the agency, and then don't be afraid to join some of the, like, I wanted to be, like, make sure that I was seen in some of the things, so I joined some of the committees and things like that. So as far as creating a seat at a table, I don't know if it was a table necessarily, but I just made sure that I was, if there was a table to sit at, I just made sure I was sitting there. I didn't create it, I just sat there. So
I would also say make money.
Yes,
At the
you
end
have
of
to
the day,
deliver.
The best advice I ever got was, that's cool, you can make creative all day long. Start making this company money.
That's right.
So you want a seat at the table? Make it money.
Ooh, and with that, we're gonna end. We're like, make money, y'all. That's the wrap up.